Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, near or far, high or low. Welcome back to the Coach D podcast, where I am joined by Coach Dan, the head coach of the London Lion Women's in the Super League, and is one of the leading figures in British basketball. With years of experience coaching across the GB youth system and a standout stint in Spain, also with the Caledonia Gladiators, this coach brings a great and powerful mix of international insight and player first development. We're going to talk about his approach to preseason versus in season training, how he builds team cohesion, what it takes to coach at the national level, and the mindset young players need to reach to get to the top. If you're serious about the growth as a player or a coach, this is a must listen. So, listeners, please give a warm welcome to Coach Dan. Appreciate you, Coach, man.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the broad intro. You big me up a lot. I wish it was really that big.
Just even before we get started, Coach, I mean, we're like almost halfway through 2025. Just before we kind of speak about just your introduction into basketball as we speak, as of today, Coach, how was your physical and how was your mental?
Now there's not much going on, so now it's a quiet period for basketball, relatively speaking. Physical could always be better.
Right. Nice. Okay, good. And just with regards to kind of just even for myself, I'm just doing research on you, and I think it would be really cool for the listeners just to kind of find out. I mean, you've coached at so many levels, from the GB youth, Spain, and even just competing in the which was previously known as the BBO and BBL. So what originally drew you to coaching and what keeps you passionate today?
Yeah, I don't know. I think probably I got involved in basketball, like a lot of people, at a young age. Got taken to a club that was linked with my school, and got a basket in my hands about, I want to say about 8, 9 years old.
Okay.
Basket in my hands, so that kind of where it started. And then as I went through sort of my school life, National League clubs and under 16s, under 18s, those kind of things. Quite a traditional route, I guess, and from that sense. But I had some really good coaches that were giving up their time, volunteers to coach me, and that was quite kind of inspirational at the beginning, because that kind of these guys are giving up their time to help me. These guys care about me. These guys want to help us improve, right?
Right.
And that was kind of like sort of the first linchpin into coaching. The school I went to was so I grew up in Whittam in Essex, and right in the middle of Essex, where there's not like a big there's never been any sort of basketball history. It's a football town, cricket, rugby, traditional sports, those kind of things. So these guys were students. They were kind of working as coaches or volunteering as coaches to help us. And when they kind of moved on from the school, they kind of left, nobody behind. So I kind of was playing for my school team, and I was playing for a club at the same time, but also coaching that team. So that was kind of like how I got kind of that first sort of like bug for coaching. And then as I went through into university, I got involved in community coaching as kind of a first job.
Okay.
So that was great. That was down south in Portsmouth. From there, got involved with what was then the England basketball performance pathway, where they used to have, if you remember, regional teams.
Yes, regionals. Yes, yeah.
Before it was a Aspire Academy. Now it's Aspire. Before then, the area performance centre. So I got involved in
RPC.
the area performance centres in the south, and the RPCs when become regional performance centres and regional teams in the south of England. And that kind of started sort of the bug for coaching, if you like. So yeah, that's sort of a long-winded answer about how it kind of started, if you like.
So I'm always curious, as coaches, we was once players, and even for myself, I can kind of remember that moment where I knew that I was really nice at basketball, whether that's on a skill level or even just like the mindset. Like I really obsess about every single detail of basketball. So for yourself, Coach, whether that moment came to you as a player or as a coach, when was that moment for you, Coach Dan, where you realized that you was nice at basketball?
Well, I wasn't blessed like yourself let's put it that way. I wasn't a very good player. I'd played in national league teams. I managed to play a little bit of national league senior basketball. I was down south, but I didn't really get much further than that. And I kind of turned to coaching quite early. I was always interested in kind of the sports science stuff around sport, particularly
Okay.
basketball, which was the sport I was drawn to. So
Right.
I naturally kind of started to go into that kind of area, and then how sports science connects with coaching, the performance analysis world as well, scouting, those kind of things. So those things kind of really drew me in. And then I guess the actual professional coaching was kind of a product of those things. I went in with that mindset more on the. I started, in fact, as a strength and conditioning coach. I was a strength and conditioning coach. In fact, in
Mm.
football. In football, I moved.
Okay. Football. Okay.
Yeah. So I moved back across to basketball. When I originally went out to Spain, I went out as a strength and conditioning sports scientist type role. And then because of necessities and whatnot, I became a coach in the academy, and then worked my way up to become a assistant coach on the first team. So yeah, it was not like a traditional route in terms to professional basketball from that point of view. I didn't have basketball talent. I was always injured. I was never really athletic. I never had like a big acumen on a technical or tactical side of things. But I always had this desire, this enjoyment for helping others, for the things around the game, how to prepare the teams, how the teams fit together psychologically, how does the tactical part of the game influence on the game model. Those kind of things really drew me in.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of how it all sort of wrapped itself together.
And you even just mentioned it there, coach. Like, how has your international coaching experience in Spain shaped your approach to coaching in the UK?
I think, if I'm being frank, like the experience in Spain really is where I became a coach. Like all my sort of even though I started coaching through the performance system in the UK, I didn't really understand coaching, what coaching was truly about, until I got to
Right.
Spain and kind of live that professional coaching life, which is just I don't know if you know, but 24/7 basketball.
That's
There's no getting away from it. It's challenging from a physical point of view. It's challenging from a psychological and a mental health point of view. But that's just how it is in Spain. That's how the culture's set up. That's how the professional game's set up there for coaches. So you've got to be tuned. It's very difficult to disconnect from it. So yeah, my basketball development happened there through the academy in Obradoiro, which is a team in the northwest of Spain, in Galicia, in a small town called Santiago.
okay.
They were ACB at the time. They've been ACB for the past 10 years. This year they're not. They dropped down last year, but they're in ACB. So I got to witness life starting off in an academy. So learning from other academy coaches to start with, academy director that kind of push you and know when to hold your hand, know when to give you a hug, know when to push you and put pressure on you. So
Right.
that was a really good experience. I got to work with lots of really, really high level players as young players, and
Yeah.
see them go on become professional players at the top level in Europe, which was really, really, like, what's the word? Rewarding, satisfying
Yeah, for sure.
to see the journey of those guys. And then myself, I got to go through that academy alongside my peers and become an assistant coach with my peers in a ACB first team,
Right.
which is another thing. And then I had good mentors along the way. Dennis Pombar, Camilo Rivero, who's the academy director there,
Yeah.
and then Moncho Fernandez was the head coach. Now he's the head coach in Girona. He was an important mentor for me and really kind of shaped a lot of the things I believe in around basketball right to this day. So
Yeah.
trying to bring those back now to the UK, and the job I had with the Lions this year, trying to bring some of those principles in around how to play, how to build a team. But situation, it was a short period of time, and
Yeah.
it's very different though. The contexts are very different. When an ACB team, you practice maybe 6-7 times a week, and with the Lions, I wasn't practicing anywhere close to that.
Right.
But clearly, completely different context. Very difficult to translate a lot of those ideas into that context.
For sure.
You always have to adapt to the context, right? The
Yeah.
context is what determines what you can and what you can't do. What beliefs you can bring in, what things you need to adapt, and you're always
Right.
learning. You're always learning about you within that context from the players and from the situation. So
Right.
To answer your question, there's certainly some things philosophically you can bring in. You can try and implement that, and you can try and implement the things you like, right? And you can try and analyze the players and see what from your philosophy could fit. But at the end of the day, you as the coach, like in any team, in any context, you have to adapt to that team and context.
Exactly.
So that was key, and that was key with the Lions this last 4 months.
I love this conversation already, man. Like, cause just when it comes to your coaching experience, I mean, even for me, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be coaching basketball for 13 years now. And what I used to teach back then versus what I teach now, like my mind has expanded with just not just what to teach, but how to teach. And like you said, context, you really have to adapt to the players that are in front of you. How you might teach something to this player might be completely different to how you teach it to another player or another team. So when it comes to the coaching philosophy and even player development, what's your overall coaching philosophy when it comes to developing players both technically and mentally?
So I could go in a lot of different directions with this question.
I love it.
Yeah, like I think first if you have to start with that context, right? So what is the context that you work within? For example, if you're in a top professional team, the sort of the KPI, sort of the gauging factor of success and failure is whether you win or lose, right?
Right.
So player development's much more different in that environment than it is, for example, if you were coaching a youth national team, if you were coaching a youth club.
Right.
So I guess that's the first point. Okay, what is the expectation from whoever employs you, right? And that will kind of gauge where you can go in terms of player development, how much time you can develop to that, how much of your effort you can develop that, and how much of your effort do you develop to the other parts of the game, your game model, your IB5, the tactics, and those kind of things, right?
Right.
So I mean, I guess that's where I would kind of start with it. And then we go back to what we just spoken about, really. Okay, what are your players and where are they trying to go? I think the key thing, and I think it's probably in Spain, this is really important, is
Okay.
analyzing your players, what they're good at, and having a focus of being 70% developing the things that they're good at, and maybe 30% developing the things that they're not so good at. So you always
Okay.
kind of, the big philosophy out in Spain is you're trying to bring them on that journey. You're
Yeah.
going to bring the players on that journey. So you're always trying to tap into the things that they're good at, to always tap into that intrinsic motivation. Okay, can I bring them upon these things? And then as you go along, if I'm working at that ratio of 3 to 1, so 3 times I'm working on the good things in the practice, and one exercise maybe I'm dedicating to those bad things, those things I want to change, those things I want to adapt to. I want to turn from weaknesses into strengths, or at least not be weaknesses anymore.
Right.
Then not dedicating so much time to them, but not overlooking them at the same time. So I think that's something that I've cut that I've kind of stuck with a lot. Like, especially approaching teams. This is a good example. This last 4 months in London Lions, for example, trying to, when I arrived, analyze the players and try and spend 3 times as much, or ratio of 75% of my time on the things that they're good at, and try and develop and enforce those things and really make those brutal strengths of the team, and then try not to spend so much time on the weaknesses. Whether that's wrong or right, I'm not sure at the end of the day, because actually, how much performance did we get working in that way?
Right.
And from a philosophical point of view, I feel like the players have much more enjoyment when it's focused on trying to maximize their strengths than it is trying to get rid of their weaknesses. If that makes sense. And at the end of the day, like,
Sure.
if we want to, basketball people, people play basketball because they enjoy it. No,
Yeah.
some people job,
So
but at the same time, everyone started the game because they enjoy it and they get this sense of satisfaction from playing, right? So I believe if you can tap into that and you can bring them along based on that, that's always a good way to start, and a good way to take them on a journey.
right. Right.
Don't know if that answers your question
No, no,
somewhat.
def definitely did. Definitely did. And even just like before we even just speak about the professional level, like when you're, I guess, in the past or even now to a certain extent, when you kind of assess kids, whether it's at the England level or even when it was at the regional level, what qualities do you look for in young players that indicate they're ready for national or even the professional level of competition?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I was watching a video from a coach called Diego Campo yesterday, and he said it best. And I really agree with this. Like for a young player to play, to be able to participate in a professional team and a men's team, they've got to really be able to do three things really well. One is they've got to have some sense of the game. So basketball IQ is a key part of that, right? So they've got to have spatial awareness, understand what the coach is looking for, understand the coordination of the other players or the collaboration of the other players, whether we're talking about systems or tactics or whatever. They've got to be on have some minimums in that area. They've got to be able to play 1v1 defense and off-ball defense at a really, really high level. And what I'm not talking about there is anything advanced, like understand how to play box and one or zone. No, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the basics.
Basics, yeah, core fundamentals, yeah.
How I use feet, how I use hands, how I understand the space between the ball or where the position of the ball and the space I need to have between my defender, based on the position of the ball. So if the ball is down, the offensive player probably is more aggressive, right? So I need to be more conservative with my space. If the ball is up, there are more passing or shooting actions. I need to be less conservative, more aggressive with my spacing, right, on ball. That kind of thing is really important, right? The basics in defense: be able to drop step, be able to wait one slide step, be able to guard two dribbles in a 1v1. Like you need to have a high level on those things.
For sure.
And then I think the final one, you need to be able to pass the ball. I think
Yes, I like
the
that.
final one.
Yeah.
Because normally, if you think about professional teams, I think about the London Lions, for example. Let's think about the London Lions men's team. You go on the London Lions men's team, and they already have 4 or 5 players, imports that are there to score the points, that they paid a lot of money for those players. So if I'm a young player going onto that team, I don't need to be there to score lots of points. Not, at least not in the beginning as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old. No, maybe when I'm 25, 26, maybe that's my role. But in the beginning, I need to be get on the court. I need to be able to do 3 things good. I need to understand what the coach wants from a basketball IQ and a collaboration point of view, how the team wants to play. I need to be able to play defense at a high level, to bring energy, to give energy to the practices, to the games, to the team. And I need to be able to pass the ball out high, at a minimum level, not minimum level, a maximum level, to be able to allow the team to collaborate and not be a deficiency on the court. Right. Those for me are the 3 key things, and I stole that a bit from thinking about Diego yesterday. But I really believe in those things as well before I'd watched that video. So
right,
I hope that kind of answers your question.
No, for sure. And you even just mentioned something there like passing, which I think is so key. Because I was even listening to this podcast where they were talking about the influence of Steph Curry. Now, obviously, on a surface level, the influence of Steph Curry to the modern game that we play now is everybody wants to shoot threes. Professional teams around the world now are shooting more threes. But what they don't realize that they made a great point of was what made Steph Curry and Klay Thompson great was, one, they received great passes, or they had guards or players who could make great on-time, on-target passes. But 2, ball movement and player movement. The reason why Klay, and you know this more than anyone, Coach, the reason why Steph and Klay are so great is not that they're a standstill catch and shoot. They're coming off screens, they're coming off decoy sets, they're constantly making that defender work just to get open. So I just love the fact that you just emphasized passing. I think that's kind of a underrated skill in a way, or something that's not taught as much. But yeah.
And we get caught up a little bit watching just Steph and Klay, right, with their amazing shooting and that talent they've got for those things. But also, if you actually go and watch a game, watch them play, and see all the other things they do in terms of making good decisions with the pass, playing defense, especially in Klay Thompson's how he plays defense 1v1. I think we overlook some of those things because they're not sexy.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're not the core things that get the highlights. Those are the things that get those guys on the court in the first place, and the other stuff, that shooting and the heroism of making those shots and that experience that comes later. So I think, I think just as a general point, just to add on to this, like,
yeah, for sure.
Going back to the youth players, I always think, I have the feeling, and maybe this may make me sound old, but I feel like we have a lot of impatience now to get to the top and get to those those flashy things. For young players, like to get to those flashy things that are going to get, and maybe it's a social media culture type thing.
Yeah.
I don't really like to get into these battles because I think they're not worth the money that they're written on. But
Right.
maybe that the players, that impatience to get to those flashy things. Well, I think perhaps we overlook some of those things. Maybe as coaches as well. When
Yeah.
we're developing players, like we overlook the importance of how important it is to be able to move your feet on defense, how important it is to use your hands on defense, how important it is your positioning on defense, how important it is to move off ball when when my teammate drives and relocate, and always be ready to catch the ball before I receive the ball, and always know what I'm gonna do
Yeah.
before I receive the ball. A lot I always go back to you talked about it before, right? About how we coached as younger coaches 4 years ago. And I remember when I was coached, and when I started coaching all these things around triple threat, right? I've got to receive the ball, I've got to be ready to shoot, pass, and dribble. Well, actually, as we go up the levels, that's no longer valid. I should be able to got to make my decision before I receive the ball now, because now the game is so much quicker now. The game is so much more athletic. The players are much bigger. The space is reduced because of the size the players have, and the athleticism they have, the ability to cover space more quickly. I got to be able to make a decision before I receive the ball. So I've got to train my spatial awareness, my reaction time, all these things, all these cues that before, when we were younger coaches, probably we weren't considering. So
True.
there's so many other things that go into that youth development now that you need to be aware of.
And as a coach at your level, how do you balance player development with the demand to win games in a professional setting like the Super League or with GB teams on an international level?
Yeah, it's difficult, and I'm going to go back. I'm sorry to be boring, but I'm going to
Oh,
go
no,
back
no, for sure. Go for it.
to that concept of context, right? So to
Yes.
give the London Lions one for an example, like I went into the job with 4 months, just January, so for last 4 months of the season, and the team was in a bad position, it was not together, and these kind of things, and arguably nothing changed towards the end of it. But my thing was always, when I came in and when I agreed to sign, the mandate was, okay, we want to improve the players, we want to try and give them as best an experience as possible. So my mindset going in was always about improve the players.
Right.
So how can we spend a lot of time working on the individual skills, on the individual habits? And I'd argue that the 4 months that we had and the volume of time we had probably wasn't enough to make some improvements. But I think if we look at the statistics overall, like of the players, I don't know, to boil it down to statistics, but
Yeah.
if you look at them overall, like the players improved over that 4 month period, because we were able to focus on the individual abilities of most of them. So context is really important. So that's kind of the underlined example. GB national teams are much more difficult because, again, the mandate kind of is to win, is just to go in there and win, to compete. But you always need to, I think, with any coaching job, you need to be player centered, right? You need to be focused on developing players, because at the end of the day, player development kind of drives winning anyway. Like, if your
Right.
players don't get better, their confidence won't increase. Your chance to win as a team, your confidence as a team, or your productivity as a team, your competence as a team won't improve, so you won't win. So you still need to dedicate a lot of time to that. I always try and look at these GB teams. Always look at it as at the individuals, or any team, in fact. Go with the individuals. So again, analyzing what the strengths are, and then using the practice to try and uncover those strengths, rather than, okay, I want to run because I've got a good cutting team or whatever. I'm going to run flex offense, and we're going to train flex offense. This is one way of doing it, though, like a system. But I think
Yeah.
a more player-centered approach. Okay, analyze players. Okay, how can we get something for this player? Okay, how can we improve this player using this situation? These kind of questions I think are more interesting when developing those GB teams. Of course, you've got to have like a baseline philosophy, how you want to play on offense, how you want to transition from defense to offense, how you want to
Right.
transition from offense to defense, and how you want to play defense on the half court in terms of principles, right? And you've got to spend some time on those things. But I think you've also got to try and develop the players within those principles as well. Okay, so a lot of individual feedback, a lot of using the video. For me, I come from that performance analysis, video analysis
Yeah.
type background. So for me, the video is a really good tool for individual corrections, for working on the individual things. I think you've got to do a lot of, apart from the tactical, the 5v5, the small-sided games, you've got to still go back and do those individual analytical here, but the technical 1v0, 1v1, I still think those things are important and do have some relevance in the game for teaching how to use your feet, how to use your hands, how to catch the ball, these kind of things. So to answer your question, like on a GB level, I think it's like a mix of all of those things, but perhaps you're still orientated a little bit more towards winning and the pressure of winning.
Right.
So that's that. And then like on the ACB level is interesting because you obviously have the academies which are trying to develop, similar to in the UK, are trying to develop players for those ACB teams. Those ACB teams are trying to win, but at the same time, like I said, go back to what I said before. You know, your team competence is only as good as the competence of your individuals and the confidence of those individuals in themselves. And you only build that confidence and that competence by improving their abilities to contribute to the team, right, and to contribute to the whole. So even at the ACB level, I remember the last couple of seasons I did, we were almost every morning doing individual work with players. So each player would have at least 2 individual work sessions per week, either on their own with, you know, conditioned small-sided games with decisions, or like pure technical sessions where there was a technical stimulus and you had to deliver this 30 times or whatever it was. But most of the time, decision making, because I think probably that's the most effective way to transfer, you know, technical skills to the tactical model, if you like.
Right.
So it kind of depends. And then with the academies, those academies are always focused on developing talent, right? So all about the players, putting all the time into developing those players. Most of the sessions on the team in Obradoiro were really individual focused. So maximum, you know, 3v3, very little 5v5. 5v5 once or twice a week as a 20-minute segment of practice, but the rest of the time, 1v1, 2v2, 3v3 in the full court, in the half court, with different stimulus, different situations, trying to improve the technical and the tactical decision making of the players. So it kind of like to bring it to a close, I guess. We'll go back to that magic word, like the context dictates everything in terms of player development, right?
Right. Right. And see how apparent now, because you really got me thinking. I mean, obviously I understand, and this is a topic that we're going to get into later on in the pod, but I understand that UK, I'm definitely seeing improvements with regards to the structure, the players, the player pathway is much more clearer and accessible to a lot of players. Back when I started, you kind of had to know the right people to even get on the radar of England, or even to know about a RPC. Like I didn't know about RPC until I became a coach. And I kind of look at and I even speak with shouts to Miles Hessen. He was kind of telling me, like, when he was playing in France, like the system over in France and your Spain's, it's so crystal clear. You have like the academy player wants to play for the national team. The national team wants to play for the pro team. There's that clear player pathway. And how apparent was it when your time in Spain? Like, was it evident that, I don't know how to describe it, to basketball is within their DNA, or was that something that you kind of gradually learned as you was working with some of the players and the coaches and things of that nature?
I mean, well, let's start with this. Football dictates everything, just like you.
Sure. Yeah.
There's no difference there. Like football is the big dog here, and as it is in the UK. The advantage that Spain has, of course, is basketball is number 2. It's the second sport, if you like. So, and it's regional as well. So I guess it's somewhat similar to England, right? Where there's regions where basketball is much more important. Barcelona, for example, basketball is super important. Of course, you've got Barcelona football. Football is important as well, but Barcelona basketball, Badalona, Catalonia is a really important basketball region. Okay, Andalusia as well, Unicaja, Granada, for example. There's a basketball history there. There's a lot of history, a lot of culture around basketball there.
Sure.
So there's a regional variance for sure, which dictates it. But the overriding one, which is the most obvious one, is the professionalized structure. You know, professional clubs dictate everything in Spain. There's not the governing body really reaps the rewards of what the clubs do, because the club structure is really high level here. From the ACB, which are professional clubs which employ a lot of staff on good salaries and players on very good salaries, of course.
Right.
And then there's also the tiers below that. I mean, you've got two leagues below, one league which is fully professional, one league which is semi-professional, and then what's called the EBA, what used to be called the EBA League now, which is called now is the third division, which is predominantly under 21s players, which under 21s players can play, and normally those teams are a second team of an ACB club or a first division club. So there's that professional structure that allows player development to happen, first of all, and it generates that feeling of that high level of basketball around in the public, in the public eye, if you like. So, and also that because that structure's there, that scouting network, that recruitment network, whatever you want to call it, exists, right? Because naturally the best players will gravitate towards the ACB academy,
Right.
the first division academy, and that does a lot of the work for the federation. The federation go to the ACB teams, the academies, and they take their players for the national teams from there. And there's surveillance on those players because there's a lot of media around these things. All ACB games are televised, all EuroLeague games are televised, all first division games are televised, all second division games are televised. So there's a lot of eyes on these games. But again, it's the professional teams are involved in player development. They drive player development. It's not the federation having to do it. The federation set their mandates and whatnot. They have it's a centralized system here in Spain. So obviously the Spanish federation sit in the middle, and then they have their regional federations as well. So a little bit to compare it would be almost be like, the London region has a federation. The South of England federation South of England has its own federation, and then basketball, the GB or whatever it is, would join all those together. So that would be how I would compare it. Well, if you don't have that, doesn't exist. That centralized system doesn't necessarily exist in the UK. So that's kind of how it works. But again, I repeat, the professional teams are the ones that go out and find the talent from the smaller clubs in the region. They bring those talents into their academies, and then their academies develop those talents, and for the national team reap the rewards of that. So it's a completely different system, and the professional structure of it really drives player and talent development.
Right. Right. And Janet, just making a shift from player development to preseason versus in-season training. Like you kind of just spoke about it earlier with regards to, 70% working on what a player or team does well, and then the other 30% you're really trying to fine-tune the areas of improvement, like what's going to make us better. So can you kind of break down your approach to preseason training, and what are your key priorities during that phase?
Yeah, so again, it's going to depend a little bit on source and what you've got available and what your goals are, I guess.
Right.
I think preseason, like as a first port of call, really is a chance to get to know the players, right? That's to analyze your players in the flesh, right? Maybe if you're a professional team, maybe you recruit those players based on video and reports or whatever, but you haven't seen them in the flesh. So it's the first chance to get to know them, get to know how they are as people, how they react to certain situations, how they react to certain feedback, to certain coaching. So I think that the preseason is a good part, is a good place to start those kind of things happening, those kind of processes. Second one, obviously, is normally players are coming back from national teams, maybe coming back from nothing, having 2 months off. So I think, imagine 6 weeks of preseason, I think would probably be standard in Spain.
Wow.
First 2 weeks probably is conditioning and endurance. It's trying to get the condition of the players back, trying to get the players in some kind of physical basketball shape to be able to affront a long season as they are now. So I think that's the sort of the first port of call, maybe the first 2 weeks spending on that.
Okay.
And then those remaining 4 weeks to start to build those habits, cultural habits that the team needs to have to be successful in the season, right? So whether that's the tactical part of how we go from defense to offense, I think is like the key one, best one to start, right? Like How do we generate points in transition? How do we space the floor out of transition? How do we outlet the ball? How do we rebound? How do we want to rebound with 2 hands, with 1 hand? If it's a long rebound, if it's a short rebound, how do we want the point guard receiving the ball? Like those kind of habits that are going to start our offense or start our defense probably are a good place to start. Habits in terms of start to define those roles of the players. So was a point guard's role, shooting guard or the guard's role,
Right.
interior players' roles, those kind of things. Try to investigate those and find those out and start to build those from a tactical point of view, at least. Those sort of principles that are going to guide your game on the half court. You know, the key ones. How are you going to space the floor? Are you going to play with a big that plays inside? Are you going to play with 5 players that play on the perimeter? Are you going to play with 2 bigs inside? Are you going to play 3 players on the perimeter? What happens when you pass the ball? What are the actions? What happens if there's a drive? What's the off-ball movement? So I think preseason really should be around those things,
Right.
conditioning, building the habits that are going to determine everything you'll do during the season. And then start to build the cohesion of the team, maybe off the court as well. So I like to do a lot of activities off the court in the preseason as well, like go and spend some time together doing whatever, whether it's a barbecue or go out for dinner with the team, lunch with the team, like start to get to know each other on a personal level. So, and it's the ideal time to do it, right? Where there's no pressure, you can have a beer and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
You know, there's not pressure of the season upon you, if you like. So I think that's an important part. I think it's important to play some games like towards the end of the preseason, like to start to play some competitive games to gauge where you're at in terms of those principles and really embed those principles against different color shirts.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start in terms of preseason, and then kind of as you go into the season, then it starts to become, at least at a professional level. When I'll probably talk about the professional level here. When you get into the season, then your week tends to be a little bit more focused about who you're going to play on the weekend or midweek or however it is.
Yeah.
So the sequence or the preparation changes very, very, very slightly, right? So now we're a little bit more focused on who we see on the weekend rather than we are on us. Whereas in the preseason, we'll just focus on building those habits that are going to help us be successful, going to help us compete, going to help us win. The basics. We'll go back to what we talked about before, no? The basics. What are the basics that we need to be able to play in defense and offense? How I catch the ball, how I space the floor, how do I orientate my body when I catch the ball? How do I make sure I'm always looking at the basket when I catch the ball? These kind of things. How do we screen? How do we set good screens? How do we roll out screens? We can talk about many things, right?
For sure.
That perhaps we won't have so much time during the week to spend on those things.
Right.
You know? So really embedding those things early in those 6 weeks in the preseason for me is that's really key. And then we can build upon those in the season through the preparation for the rivals we'll play, because some rivals will emphasize some of our weaknesses more than others. Some will allow us to play to our strengths more than others, right? So that's how during the season, you continue to develop those things, but it tends to be a little bit more determined by who you're going to play, I would say.
And just with regards to that, I mean, you broke it down perfectly just with regards to what are the main areas of emphasis, which I think is so key. And it's funny how I'm reminded of that a lot this season, where, you know, there's that quote, sorry, that I feel like every coach knows, that, you know, player doesn't um a player doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them, the person before the player. Like once they feel like you actually care about them and how they are on a day-to-day basis, their mental well-being, then they're bought into what you want to emphasize with preseason offense, defense schemes, and things of that nature. So what you brought up is super key. So again, just before we move to the team cohesion and the culture aspects of basketball, like what's one common mistake you see coaches make when transitioning from preseason into in-season training?
I think the biggest one, I don't want to talk out of turn here, but the biggest one probably is getting too far away from what makes you good, what makes your team good, and be now dedicating too much time to prepare for the other team, if that makes sense.
Right.
So you did all that work on your habits and embedding a philosophy, embedding a game model, style of play, all those kind of things, values, culture, you just a bit alluded to. And then you go into the season and you see a lot of coaches just spend the whole week focused I don't know a lot of coaches, but some coaches spend the whole week focused on the rival team and often forget a little bit of what they're about. And you also, this will happen for sure. This happened to you as well. You watch a team and think, "Oh, in practice, I need to do something for this. I need to change something to be able to attack this player. I need to change something to be able to defend this." But at the end of the day, when you come to the game, the game's normally won and lost on what? On the basics, right? I think I try and think. I said this to my assistant the other day. I said, I try to think out how many games we've lost based on the scouting and how many games we've lost because we haven't done the basic things really well. Out of the ball, circulate the ball between us, pass and move, or open passing lines, these kind of things. Like, I think that's the common mistake, that we get too far away from those things. We get too focused on who we're going to play next week. Actually, no, we win the game and we're good as well, and we're good because of this, and this.
Right.
Can we emphasize this week on, week out, and be really good at those things, regardless of course, for you need to adjust, especially at professional level. You may need to adjust a couple of things, right, in the scouting to be able to compete, to be able to reduce the effectiveness of this player or that player. Okay, but
Right.
you can't change 20 things. You can change one thing, maybe. You can change maybe two if you've got a lot of time. But you need to be really good at what you're good at. So I think probably that's what I would say to answer your question.
And you mentioned something that I'm curious now, just with regards to that initial first 2 weeks, you're kind of just getting to know the player and the players, and you're kind of figuring out, how they are as a personality, what they like to do offensively, defensively, or even just away from the court. So therefore, you're able to build. Okay, now that I know that my team likes to shoot, I'm already thinking of quick out of bound plays, or plays to run for quick hitters or inbounds or things of that nature. So when it comes to, again, just building that team cohesion, what are some of your go-to strategies?
Well, I think the key one is you need to know your players. That's the first part. You need to know why your players are there and what are their motivations. What do they want to get out of it?
Right.
Because if you don't know those things, it's really impossible you can put the pieces together.
Sure.
Because everyone's going to have their individual motivations, but you need to try and mold those individual motivations into a shared purpose. Okay, we're going to use these individual motivations. For example, I'm a 16-year-old kid and I want to go to the US to play to play in college, Division 1 college. Okay, how are you going to get there? The only way you're going to get there is, one, if you get better every day in practice, and two, if the team's winning, because none of these American coaches want players on losing teams, right?
Right.
So converting those individual motivations into shared motivations is, I think that's the first part in terms of building cohesion. And then I'm gonna name drop. I had a really good call with Alan Keane in the summer when I was doing the under-16s, before I did the under-16s position, and he was really good at kind of focusing me in these things. I hadn't really thought about it so much before, but we talked about individual motivations, driving team, collective shared purpose, and then the values. What are the values that you're going to stand for in that team? So what are you, and those values will kind of drive the standards of the team. Okay, so if respect is really important, then the standards are going to be, okay, you can't talk out of turn, or you can't swear at the referee, or you can't get technical fouls, these kind of things. But if you're getting these things, you're not driving performance. Okay, so understanding, setting some values that relate to the team, relate to where the team wants to go. So to share, if the collective purpose of the team is we want to qualify for top 8 in Europe, for example, what's going to allow me to get there? Okay, well, we have to be able to share the ball. Everyone has to be able to chip in. Everyone has to have an opportunity. So passing the ball, sharing the ball, ball circulation is an important value of how we play, right? And that will impact our style of play and our game model. Level of concentration. We talked about respect, not doing stupid stuff that's going to allow points to go against us. No, so I get technical foul, the other team gets points against us, we would drop our level. So defining those values, defining those standards is really important. For example, we want to be a really physical team. One of our values is be out physical in the other team. Okay, we need to be good. The standard is, okay, we need to win the rebound and battle every game.
Right.
We need to be a good offensive rebounding team, good defensive rebounding team. We need to be top in all the games, and those will kind of define some kind of performance indicators or some key performance indicators that are related to our game model. So we just talked about a good one there, rebounding. Okay, so every game we're going to win a bigger percentage of the offensive rebound than the rival team. That'll be one of our key performance indicators that we can monitor as we go through the season, or we go through a European Championship, or as we go through game to game.
Right.
So that's kind of the process. But I'll take it back to the beginning. Right, it's about knowing your players and knowing your players' motivations. Because if you don't know that, you don't know how to push your players' buttons, and you don't know how to be caring when you need to be caring. You spoke about caring coach at the moment, and it's really true. If you don't understand how to be a caring coach in this day and age, then probably your life expectancy as a coach is going to be pretty short.
Sure.
Just because of now this mental health is such an important thing now. There's so many different things around these young athletes' lives, and there's so many different things impacting them. Social media influence. There's a lot of noise around them. If you're not able to be, what's the word? It's gone out of my head, but be caring towards some of these things and understand some of these things and be able to meet them halfway on a couple of these things, then your life expectancy is going to be short, and vice versa. When you need to push some buttons, when you need to be more strong with your coach, okay, you need to understand how they're going to react, and is it going to be a positive reaction for the team or a negative reaction for the team? So knowing your players and connecting with your players is always going to be the number one part in terms of building cohesion, because everything that comes after that we've spoken about is based upon that connection you have with your players.
Right. Right. Now, just with regards to coaching at the GB level, I mean, man, I kind of look at where GB started to where it is now, and I'm super proud. Even us being in the Eurobasket for me is like huge news, both on the men's and the women's side as well. Even hearing about how the under 16s, under teens team is doing is huge, especially for UK basketball. So with regards to coaching at the GB level, Coach Dan, like what are some of the biggest challenges and rewards of coaching at the GB youth level?
So yeah, like I always loved coaching national teams. Most of my experience was as an assistant coach. The main reward, like, is always wearing the the GB flag and being able to sing the national anthem. Like, that's representing your country is always going to be the highlight of one of those roles. And that's what I kind of always think about when you talk about GB. Okay, the summers of standing in front of the the GB fans and the national anthem and those kind of things. So that kind of really sticks out for me. I think the one for me, I'm a person that I'm pretty driven by learning, by developing, by learning new things. And for me, they were amazing. They're amazing learning grounds. Really, I was really lucky. So when I started with the GB programs, I was lucky to be as a performance analysis coach with Steve Bucknell and Carl Brown.
Steve Bucknell, wow, shout out to Steve.
And I went on to be Carl Brown's assistant shortly after that.
Wow.
When Carl got the head coaching job. So for me, they were amazing. They were formative years. Learned lots of things about team management and managing personalities, because those national teams generally are quite conflictive. They're normally the best players that are used to having the ball in their hands a lot. They're used to being the most important player on the team, and then all of a sudden they come into an environment where 90% of them aren't that player anymore, and the other 10% are. So it becomes this big melting pot of personalities, of culture. You learn a lot from the players. I learned a lot to play, especially this last summer. Like, it was pretty tricky. It was a really tricky experience. I learned a lot from the players, but you always learn a lot from the coaches as well. And going through the ups and the downs with the coaches, you learn a lot about yourself, how you deal with setbacks, how you deal with failure, how you deal with winning, because the winning's only good for 2 minutes, because the next day you've got another game.
Exactly.
And so,
sure.
And the same with losing. With coaches, we're almost, for coaching, the games almost feel like an exam for us, right? Like they're like the exam at the end of all the work we've done. So we've done our project, we've put all our team together, we've done our due diligence, we've done our homework, and the exam is that final piece of work. We either pass it or we don't. And when we fail, we put all the lost on us, right?
Talk about it.
And when we win, it's good for 5 minutes, but then the next game's coming. So being able to deal with that and dealing with losing, dealing with failure, that's a really difficult thing, and really good environment for those kind of things. I feel like after this summer, like I came out like with a much more appreciation for, okay, it's not just about winning and losing. Okay, there's a lot of other things that go into this. The player development goes into this. The relationships you develop with the players, the relationships you develop with the coaches. There's a lot of other things you win in those environments, but you learn to tolerate the failures much better, because you have to have that short mindset. There's always what's that expression? You got to have like the mindset of a goldfish or whatever it is.
Yes, yeah, yeah, like short-term memory, yeah, yeah, when it comes
Yeah,
to
you've got to be able to go from one thing to the next situation in
right.
12 hours. You may play a game at 9 o'clock at night, you may lose, you may win, but at 10 o'clock you've got practice for the next game, to prep the next game. So you've got to get the next game prepped, you've got to do your scouting or whatever you got to do, you've got to understand your game plan, and you've got to go and try and deliver it. And you've got your practice and you've got your game, and that's what you've got. So from that point of view, like, it's a really challenging environment and a really enjoyable environment from that, and a really fruitful environment from that point of view. Yeah, I think I've given you strengths and weaknesses there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, and I think again, just I mean, I'm gonna be watching the Eurobasket, but even just looking at some of the under 16s, under 18s, it's like the international level is so high. Like, not just the scout report, but the mistakes you're afforded to make at, let's say, local league, or to a certain extent national league. You make those mistakes on an international level, like the corner three, or you don't communicate on the hedge, or they slip the screen and the help isn't there, or you're not moving on flight of the pass on defense. Like, they are going to make you pace. How do you prepare players mentally and tactically to represent their country on a international stage?
Yeah, it's difficult. Like, don't really have a really solid answer for you on this one, but I mean, you have to go to the specific. You have to go to the specifics. Okay, what are the things that are going to differentiate success and failure,
Yeah,
and go right to the things that are going to give you success. It's not like a club season. When a club season, you can spend a lot of time on lots of different things, and almost when you go into a national team environment, especially on the GB front, where because of exam periods, because of all the other commitments that the players often have in the summer, your preparation time is quite limited.
sure.
Resource is quite limited. So you've really got to first you've got to see what comes in the box. Okay, so what the players already know, what experiences they already had, how have they played in their clubs, and this goes back to doing a little bit of homework about them before preparing their strengths and weaknesses, understanding their strengths and weaknesses before you've got them in your hands. So what comes in the box, what do they know, and then try and feed off of some of those things, because like I said, you're not going to have time to develop everything, you're not going to have time to focus on everything. So you've got to be really specific with and really efficient with your practices, going right to the specifics. Okay, what's the game model? How are we going to deliver it? What's our collective vision? How does that feed into our game model? If we're an athletic team, we want to play fast, what's it look like on the court? How are we going to achieve playing fast? Is that a question of outlet? Do we outlet always to the point guard? Do we allow outlet to any guard, so we don't have to wait for the point guard every time? Those are the kind of questions you have to ask yourself, and you have to have to be really convinced, and you really have strong conviction in those things right from the get-go. And if they're wrong, if they're right, you have to live with them. You haven't got time really to go back and change them. Once you've made a decision, you've got to go with it. So that's like a big difference if you like, between national team and club coaching. You've got to really be specific. Okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to play together? Okay, this, and this, and you can't do everything. You've got to keep it simple for them, digestible, and try and lean on some of those habits and those experiences and knowledge that they bring into the camp.
Right.
So that's kind of how I would do it in terms of building the team and the cohesion and that game model we just spoke about, those kind of things.
Yeah.
In terms of like the attention and the retention of information, those kind of things, like we talked about a little bit before, again, knowing who the players are, get to know the players really well, really quickly, and then knowing how to how to get their attention. So how do you coach them to get their attention? Okay, so is that a question of, okay, if we want to improve their attention, then we can't just do shell drill all the time. Okay, we need to go maybe do shell drill and then transition to offense. Okay, so you're developing that ability to attend to one stimulus, then straight to the next stimulus, for example.
Right.
So little mechanisms, little tricks, so you can start to join the different parts of the game to prove their attention. That's important. I go back to the use of video. Like for me, that's a key one. Use of video. I was with Billy Bello this year, was one of my assistants in GB last summer, and he was very good at, in the video, getting them to do small group tasks together where they were almost driving a lot of the video, a lot of the feedback that was going on in the video. So they would comment on one part of the video, another group would comment on another part of the video. So you're always checking for retention information. So little techniques, mechanisms like that can help you be efficient and utilize the time to really improve the attention, improve the focus, improve the understanding and the retention of the players. There's many more, but I can't, off the top of my head, I would probably be blabbing to you. So those are the ones that stick out.
Right. And just the final two topics before we wrap up with the Beyond the Game segment. Advice for aspiring players. Like, what advice do you have for young players who dream of representing GB or playing pro? Like, from your perspective, Coach Dan, what what separates those who make it from those who fall short?
Yeah, I'll go back to the beginning of the conversation. Really, like, it's the impatience and patience war. You know, focus on those, on the basics that are gonna get you on the court. You know, I think if you speak to any coach, especially the coaches that at the top level, you speak to any coach and they ask what they're looking for in a young player, they're probably not going to be asking for 40% 3-point shooter or a guy that catches every alley oop. They're not asking for those things. They're asking for, can they get on the court? Can they not be a hindrance to my team? Can they deliver energy when they come onto the court? How do they deliver energy? Being really good on defense, away from the ball, not making mistakes on offense in terms of the system, the game model, not forgetting when is a cut, when is a screen, okay, how to use the screen, those kind of things, basic things. Those are the things that get you on the floor at the high level. It's not the 3-point shots. If you're an amazing shooter, those things, because you're a young player, you're not going to have those shots. They're not passing to you. They're passing to the guy that's earning 1.5 million a year.
Sure.
It's different. So like that would be my main advice. Like, be really, really diligent on the basic things and don't skip steps. Okay, work, and it's so cliche and it's so boring, like, for me to say that, but it is the difference. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if you know, I have a player who now is playing in ACB in Bilbao, but I remember his first practice with first team Loro, didn't box out on the first defense he was in. Coach threw him out of practice. Like,
Wow.
it's basic things. That's what expected. The level demands that you're really good 100% of the time on those things. So that needs to be a habit. It needs to be something you're not even thinking about. It needs to be something you do without thinking. Exactly. So those things are the key things. Those will get you on the court. Later, the talent and those kind of things you'll develop, and your shooting and those kind of things, your ability to score, your ability to generate, things that you were good at probably at youth level, you'll develop them as you go, and those things will be more prevalent as your career develops at the senior level, right?
Right.
But probably in the beginning, when you're playing against the better defenders and you're used to, better offensive players and you need to have some minimums on the basics that are going to get you on the court and not get in the way of the coach's job. So, and then the other one is like, to listen to your coaches. Like, your coaches are there to help you. They're not there to do the opposite. They're not there to make it difficult for you. They're there to make you better. That's why coaches do it most part. No, they're there to help you improve and help you get to the next level. So listen to your coaches and be really focused on what your coaches are demanding of you. Asking questions is really, really important.
Right.
Asking questions, checking your knowledge, improving your knowledge as a player. Those things along with the coaching is really, really important.
And this is something that I learned in my very early years of coaching. Because, I mean, you've probably gotten this a lot, Coach. I mean, even at the level that you coach at now, players are constantly asking, how can I get better? And one of my go-to responses, and I got this from my mentor, shout out to Coach Hugh, he said, that you should always tell players to watch the game of basketball, not to be entertained, but to be educated, see it from the coach's perspective. Why do they call that play? Why are they pressing? Why are they dropped into a 2-3? Why have they changed their pick and roll coverage? Watch it as a player. You might zone in on this post player has great footwork. What is making them effective? Oh, when they screen, they roll into the basket. When the shot goes up, they're immediately boxing out. But also as a referee, understanding what's a foul, travel, gather step, and things of that nature. So for yourself, Coach Dan, kind of just staying on that topic of advice for players. What role does basketball IQ and decision making play in a player's long term success?
Won't be able to. You are moving, interacting, reacting. You won't get very far.
Sure.
At least you won't get to the higher levels. Having that knowledge, and this goes back to the differences between different countries as well. Like being able to see basketball, be able to live and watch and understand how basketball operates. What the differences are between the different countries. Okay, well, how do players use screens? How do players pass the ball inside? How do the players play out the low post? How do the players play out the high post? How do the zone defenses work? And these kind of things. There's all kind of things that go and merge into that basketball IQ aspect. But also, we said it before, your ability to catch the ball and have spatial awareness, your reaction time.
Yeah.
Regarding the defense, if there's a defender, if there's not, the defender's arriving late, if they're arriving on time, whatever. Those kind of things, it all kind of merges together. No, I need to be able to vicariously, if you watch basketball and learning from basketball, I also need to be able to doing it and also reflecting on my decisions on the court. Okay, did I make the right decision? Did I make the wrong decision? Why was it the right decision? Why was it the wrong decision? So there's a lot of things going there. Like we said about the referees as well. Like that's a good one that kind of overlooked as well. Like what the referees, or the knowledge that the referees can impart regarding the rules, regarding the what's the word? The sort of borders, you like, of what's legal, what's not legal, why is it legal, why is it not legal, particularly around screening, right? Like I don't remember coaching in the women's league this year. Like I don't remember a season where I've seen so many offensive fouls because of screens.
Yes.
So illegal screens. So those kind of things that referees can really help to drive that basketball IQ, that knowledge. Okay, why is it an illegal screen? Okay, if I forward pivot on a screen, probably make a legal screen. If I reverse pivot to improve a screen, probably it's not an illegal screen. So those kind of nuances, referees can really help us. Can really help the young players, all players, in fact,
Right.
continue developing. So yeah,
Right.
good point.
And just the final topic is just with regards to leadership, coaching growth, but also just the future vision, especially for UK basketball. Like, what's one lesson, Coach Dan, that you've learned early in your coaching journey that still guides you today?
Regarding what specifically? Anything specific or on this one?
It could be just on life. It could be on basketball. It could be on a offensive principle that you still carry on till this day, or just your approach to the game.
Yeah, I think like in terms of a general one, like as that saying, I probably misquoting this saying, but that luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? Something along those lines. Like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good kind of mantra that kind of sticks with me quite well. Luck happens, but it always happens because you've done your background, you've done your work, you've got your experience, you've prepared yourself for those situations, and you're ready when the opportunity arrives. And I think coaching is really important. And it's not just about coaching opportunities, coaching jobs.
Right.
It's also about in-game moments. So have you seen this situation before? Have you thought about this situation before it occurs in the game? End of a game, you're down by 3, you've got the ball out of bounds. Okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to set your team up to play in that situation? Okay, so say you could be lucky, win that game, you score a 3 or whatever, you get into overtime, you win that game, could be lucky, but no, it's about a question of preparation, right?
Yes.
So I think preparation, that's the most important one. And really linked with that is that spoke about it before a little bit as well, like that continuous need to keep getting better, keep developing, keep learning.
Right.
There's a good expression in Spanish, which is si no aprendes, como, no, I'm gonna say it wrong. Peores, which basically means if you don't improve,
Yeah.
you get worse. Si no mejoras, empeora. Which was a kind of like that's kind of a mantra that's kind of stuck with me for big part of the coaching career as well. Like, yeah, you need to always be seeking to get better, because if you stop getting better, you'll decline. Okay, you'll get worse. So I think that goes hand in hand with the preparation, right? I
Right.
need to be prepared for the situations that can happen in game, whether it be coaching jobs, but also like around players as well, right? If you want to be a leader, you spoke about leadership, right? So you want to be a leader, you want to lead by example, you want to lead with presence. A player is not gonna it's not gonna buy into what you're about if they don't believe you're prepared, believe you're really invested in what you're doing, or really invested in what they're doing.
Right.
So your preparation around getting better, understanding basketball, understanding them, understanding what they do best, what they don't do best,
Yeah.
those kind of things, a part of leadership are really important. And again, it all links back to that being prepared and always improving. So
Right.
I would say those two things. Another one I like is, and it's quite a cliche one as well, is never too high, never too low. And I think that with the national teams, if you're a national team coach, that's actually doesn't matter. Like any coach,
Yeah.
it's a really important one, because, like we said, like the wins and the losses, they last only as long as to the next practice, right? So
True. Yeah.
you've got to be able to get past the losses quickly. There are other things in life except for basketball as well. So you've got to be able to disconnect and get to those things. You can't just be, if you're just going to be wrapped up in basketball all the time, then we're going to get into we talked about before, mental health and all these kind of things. It's difficult as a young coach. Like, I understand that, but I understand it when I was starting even in the academy. Like, when we lost a game, and you're not expected to lose a game in Oberlura Academy, you're expected to win every game by a lot. When you lose a game, it's like, well, the world's finished. Like, it's Armageddon. No, it's not. There's a practice tomorrow, and next week will be all right. So yeah, those kind of things are, I think, for a young coach, is like a really, really important. Like, never too high, never too low. Always try and stay on a straight line, because the next game, the next practice is right around the corner.
Right. Right. And just with regards to British basketball, where do you see the growth of British basketball heading in the next 5 to 10 years, and what role can coaches like yourself play in that evolution?
Yeah, like, I'm probably not the best person to speak about it, really, because I'm on the ground in the UK, but I'm also in Spain as well. So I'm probably not the best person to talk about it. But I don't see a lot of what's going on, like, at the National League level, as much as I'd like to, or below that. But I think for the most part, like, the feeling I have is that it's going in the right direction. I think we have a two tendencies really in the UK. One, or I see anyway. One is that we like to put ourselves down. We like to say everything's really bad, much worse than it really is, and
True.
we fail to really praise the things we do well. Which, we have a lot of things going for us compared with a lot of other countries. So if we put ourselves in the context of other countries, actually we have a really strong academy system, like some really good academies, really good coaches, developing really good players every year. Quite a really interesting and really exciting brand of basketball at those academies. We have national teams that compete at the top of Division B, if not on the cusp of Division A at youth level, and then of course on the senior level, the Eurobasket qualifiers. So those are really positive things. And then we have the other thing of we try and shoot it all down as well at the same time, with a lot of infighting and people not working together and those kind of things. And I don't really know much about those things, so I'm not going to talk about it. But the image that presents to the rest of the world,
Yeah.
especially, like, I look at it from Spain,
Of course.
isn't the best, isn't the best, and it makes it look a little bit not serious
Yeah.
on some levels, which I think when you talk to agents, when you talk to players, they almost dismiss the opportunity, the viability of basketball in England because of that. They look at basketball, I don't want to go to England because it's not a serious system, it's not serious professional league. Well, actually, professional league's really good. Like, we saw the game we saw on the women's side, especially the women's game at the weekend, it was really good. And the previous series, London Lions against Newcastle, was amazing.
Right.
It was an amazing series. It was an amazing game. So yeah, like it's got a lot going for it. So I don't think we should put it down. We should definitely be excited about it, but we should always continue to keep developing and keep improving. And I think like the coaches, like for me, like is wherever you look all over the world, this rule is really true. Wherever there's good coaches, there's good players. Like
Sure.
as simple as that. So the better the coaches are, the better the coaching is, the better the players will be. And your ability for young coaches, for me, is my opinion is don't skip steps, don't be impatient. And I'm not talking about development, the development of your career. I'm talking about the development of players. So spend a lot of time focusing on what we've talked about: basics, simple things. Do the simple things really good. If you can go out of players, do simple things really good, then we'll have lots and lots of really good players. Because if we do, you imagine we have a lot of players that do a lot of really basic things really good. Imagine defense, do a lot of really good defensive things, then your level of practice is going to increase.
Right.
Same on offense, right? If you have a lot of players that are really good at spacing the floor, that understand how to catch the ball and make decisions, and these kind of things, I say is simple, but not necessarily simple. But anyway, what I call basic things.
Yes.
You have players that are really good at that, you're going to increase the level of your defense and your practice in your games. So I think that all those things go hand in hand. If you can teach those things better, we can develop much better players. We can develop a much better level of basketball, and that will be seen across the national teams and national system. As simple as that. I say as simple as that. It's not simple. It's difficult to do. It's easy to say. It's difficult to do.
True.
But for me, that's where it needs to go. I think like kind of a final one for young coaches, like try and find like opportunities to get out of your context and see other context, whether it's in the UK, just go and see good coaches in the UK. Like I was really lucky. Like I don't know, it's because maybe I've been in the system and I know I have good contacts in this. But if you go and you send an email to Newcastle Eagles, you send an email to London Lions, I want to watch a practice, these kind of things, I imagine they would say yes most of the time.
Yeah.
Like I want to go and watch how you do practice. And same in Europe. Like if you want to go and watch a practice in Europe, you should be, you can find contacts in LinkedIn, you can find club emails, you send an email, you never know, you get a chance to go and watch another context, how they do it in another context, and bring one thing back to your context to help your practicing as a coach. Like why wouldn't you do it? Like those are things that can develop you as coach, and as a sort of knock-on effect, develop your players. So opportunities outside of your context are always really good. Like go out and see what's out there, go and see other coaches, go to some clinics internationally, go and see some other ways of doing things, just to enrich and add some fruit to your way of working.
Right. And just before we wrap up, we have the Beyond the Game segment, and this first question, because I'm super intrigued now just to get your mind on. And with this, coach, the first one, this could go the life route or basketball, whichever side resonates with you the most in the moment. The first one, coach, is a skill that is taught by many, but only mastered by a few.
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh, we could do a lot of them. We could do a lot here, right? I'm just going to say on-ball defense for me. I think we all teach.
Why do you mean that?
I think we all teach on-ball defense, but how many really great on-ball defensive players do we produce? And I know I'm going back to old examples from the rest of the conversation, but
I love it though.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's one. Probably like actually scrap that. Passing.
Okay.
Passing.
Okay.
I think like as coaches, we all want our teams to pass the ball, right? Make an effort to get our teams to circulate the ball, get our teams to move sides, these kind of things. But actually, as coach, I'm talking about coaches here, not necessarily players, but have we mastered the art of teaching passing? Have we mastered that? Like how many coaches have actually mastered the art of teaching passing? If it's such a core important skill, we don't play tennis. We play basketball as 5 players, not one.
Right.
Collaboration is the name of the game. So if passing is a fundamental skill related to that, why do we still struggle to pass the ball? And I go back to my national team experience last summer. we were one of the worst teams in turning the ball over, and all our turnovers come from misplaced passes. So for me, it's a skill that we try to enforce, we try to teach a lot, but we haven't mastered it. I know I haven't mastered it, and I'm still looking for the answers on that.
Right.
Yeah, that would be my answer to that. Forget the defensive, but the defensive one to get this one.
Yeah, for sure. I like that one. Next one, best piece of advice you've ever received.
Put me on the spot. I'm probably going to go back to one of those mantras we already talked about. Really,
Mm,
si no mejores, peores. I like that one.
yeah.
That was from Moncho Fernandez in No Rodoro. For me, is the key one. Like, if you don't continuously keep improving, continuously looking for more knowledge, continuously developing, well, you won't be the best prepared coach possible. But also I feel like your motivation to be a coach, to do what it takes to be a coach day in, day out, or do the due diligence won't be there. So you need to continuously strive to get better, to better yourself. And that's not just in coaching. I think probably that's in all professions and all facets of life. Probably you could apply that to, right? So
Right.
yeah, that's probably the best advice if I had one. That's off the top of my head. If you give me half an hour to think about it, I'll say something.
Well, for sure. And just the final two, coach, before we wrap up. I mean, I appreciate your time, honestly, man. This one is more of a you have to fill in the blank within the sentence. So the sentence is, if it wasn't for basketball, I wouldn't have learnt filling the blank about myself.
I wouldn't have learned basketball. I wouldn't have learned my strengths and weaknesses. Probably a bit boring one there, but I'm going to put those in. I wouldn't have necessarily known my strengths and weaknesses as it pertains to kind of leadership. Let's put it in that bracket. I think that's probably the one. Yeah, strengths and weaknesses of leadership. Probably is not the most sexy answer you've had on it, but
No, it's all good. And just the final one, and please feel free to take your time, but this is a definite on the spot question. Like, there is a coach right now who is on his way to Waterstones, and he says, he's asking the librarian, could you point me in the right direction for the book by Coach Dan? And he says, yeah, you just go up the stairs, you go to the sports section, you go to the bestseller section, you'll see it there. And, the coach is going up the stairs, he goes to the top shelf, goes in the sports section, and he looks at your book, Coach Dan. And the question is, what would the title of your autobiography be?
that's a good question. I like that question. Say yes.
Okay.
Say yes, especially when you're young, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially when you're young. Like, don't turn when the opportunities come, especially like with coaching where it's so competitive
Yeah.
and the opportunities are so thin and other than expression, thick and far between. So yeah, say yes to any opportunity you can. When you get older and you got kids and these kind of things, that changes. Life changes, right? But when you're young, you're a young coach and you're on your way up. Say yes to as many things. I think that was kind of what helped me. Like, for example, when I had the opportunity to come to Spain, it was really daunting because I didn't speak Spanish. I never lived in another country before. So when I did, it was really daunting. It was really daunting going to another place, leaving your friends behind. Okay, yeah, I want to go and do an experience. So I'm going to learn something. I'm going to get better. I'm going to learn to become a basketball coach. I'm going to learn to apply some of the skills I've learned in the UK as a basketball coach and keep developing. So saying yes to that opportunity at that time, and that, on a really, really small salary, that was a big risk, but I think it paid off in the end to a wife and a kid and many other things later.
Right.
It paid off. So yeah, that would be it. Say yes.
Love that. I mean, listeners, this has been honestly, I've been a student sitting in the seat, to be honest, just learning from you, Coach Dan, and I'm sure it's been a gem for the listeners, for the players and the coaches, and just with regards to the socials, or for players or even just coaches who just kind of want to continue to learn, continue to grow, and just continue to work on their coaching portfolio. When it comes to the socials, where can they find you?
Yeah, now you got me. I don't know what the thing is, but I think if you put Dan Pets into Instagram or in X, it should be at Dan Pets. I think in both. I think it's the same thing. So
Okay.
yeah, please feel free to reach out. Like, yeah, I'm always always like yourself, like the conversation is one of those other areas where you can continue to develop, share ideas, learn from each other. So I'm always open to that. And yeah, appreciate your time, Coach, on the for the podcast. It's been for me, okay, speaking has been good, but also learning
Mhm.
while speaking and thinking about the things I'm saying to you and whether they stimulate some thought, and there's some learning going on there as well. So appreciate that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for the listeners, don't worry, the link for Coach Dan will be in the description of this podcast. But this is myself, Coach D, and Coach Dan signing out.